Welcome to the Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Tom Roach. I'm joined by my guest today, Dr. Dan Dunn. Dan has a PhD from Wayne State University, and he's the author of the book Communication: Embracing Difference. An interesting topic for our discussion today. Dan is also taught in the Management Development Program at Harvard University. Dan, Donald Trump is our new president, contrary to our predictions. How do we get this so wrong?
I'm not sure. One thing I do want to say to our viewers, I wanted to acknowledge and apologize for missing this. You brought me on as an expert, and I just didn't see it.
Well,
so
you
I'm
aren't
sorry
the
for
only
that.
one. Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the pollsters got it wrong. I think that there was a hidden vote out there that when people were being polled, they weren't comfortable admitting that they were voting for Trump. And so it didn't show up because I had thought in my graduate class, again, I never talk about my view, but they asked me, it's a Monday night class, what's going to happen on Tuesday? And I said, well, Hillary's going to get between 300 and 320 electoral votes. You know, I was looking at the voting in Florida, and the Latino vote was way up, and early voting was up. And I couldn't imagine Pennsylvania going the way it did.
Gosh, yeah.
But so I had to, the same thing that I said to your viewers, I had to say to my class.
Yeah.
You know, that I got it wrong.
Yeah,
and I
have
feel
some
bad
humble
about
pie
that.
with me.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's worth looking at why it went in a direction that we didn't anticipate. And a couple other points. One is that survey methodology usually includes an early question in the survey that says, did you vote in the previous election? And you have to ask that because you can't just survey everybody.
Right.
You know, we have to try to survey voters. And the only way to verify that somebody's going to vote is before the election is to ask them if they voted in the previous election. Then you can say, well, there's a reasonable chance that they'll vote in this one. But Trump brought a lot of people to the polls who hadn't voted before.
Yes, he did.
So we probably weren't sampling enough
Right.
people here.
Yes, he did.
And I don't know how to get around that.
You know,
Yeah.
and he said he was going to bring people out, and
Yeah.
you know, and his crowds were so big, and I guess in my mind,
Yeah.
I wasn't certain. I didn't think that would be enough.
Yeah.
But added to the fact that the Obama vote in 2012 was much bigger than the Hillary vote in
Right.
2016
Yeah.
in some really key areas. So he did tap into something.
Yeah.
You know, and you, especially in terms of this economic unrest. I think, as we had said before, you know, if you're in the market, things have been really good. But if you're not in the market and wages have been stagnant for the past 15 years, and there was just a cluster of voters out there that felt that they had been left out, and he tapped into that. I
Well,
think.
and his first statement after being elected was that he's going to create jobs. And it was he's still keen on that issue.
That would be that would be actually really smart for him to work on infrastructure, because if he does that, those are good paying jobs for blue collar workers. And because I think people are scared.
But just in terms of why it was not anticipated by the experts, by those of us who thought maybe we were experts anyway.
Right.
Another thing that I just found out about, sort of through word of mouth, but I understand that there was a push the day before the election where people were getting phone calls saying, just vote abortion, just vote for the Republican candidate because he's going to appoint the next judge. And it was, it seems to me it was a really smart move, because Trump, even if you wanted to vote for him, I think, was making it difficult by some of the statements that he'd made and the tape from the trailer that had been released and things like that. But the argument about just vote the abortion issue kind of says it's okay to dismiss who this person is and just vote for what you think he represents.
Yeah.
And that turned out people, it maybe have turned people around, maybe it brought people in who weren't planning on voting. So I think that was another, if they really did that across the board, I know they did it in certain areas around here, but if that really was a national campaign, that might have accounted for some of the push.
Well, because that's a key issue, the next Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
Because you look at this and you look at not just his behavior on that tape,
Yeah.
but you look at this and you say to yourself, who tweets at 3 o'clock in the morning about a beauty queen? I mean, who does that? And so but I think you're right. The court became a big issue, and so the Republicans, in retrospect, strategically for their cause, did the right thing because everybody expected Hillary to win. I went to Nate Silver, and this guy gets it right. Larry Sabato, so I think it was just a real shocker, but I think you're onto something there, that the concern about the court may have pushed people out.
And the Republicans in Congress heightened awareness of that when they refused to let
Absolutely.
Obama make the appointment. So it was, certainly a reminder to everyone that that's an issue. And so one of the other issues that's come up as a result of the election and some of Trump's more recent rhetoric is the role of the news media.
Yes.
And we're hearing a lot about they're calling themselves the fourth estate. Whenever they whenever they want something, they become the fourth estate. And they're claiming that Trump as president is supposed to expose himself more to scrutiny, and that he hasn't been doing that. He's scolded them for the way they reported the election, which is, crossing sort of another line that hasn't been crossed too much before, although we do remember Nixon going after the press during Watergate.
Right.
So,
and also with Agnew, he became his
his
attack dog.
The point person on that. Yeah. He called them nattering nabobs of negativism, as I recall. Right. Yeah.
He became the spokesperson for the silent majority, which is a phrase that Trump has picked up.
Yeah.
And then he went out and attacked the news media.
Yeah.
And as troubling as he was in 1968 when he had all these blunders, he became invaluable for Nixon. So Trump, he's kind of tapped into something here.
Yeah. Well, so interesting question though is, were they really functioning like the fourth estate? I mean, I'm a reader of the New York Times, and I really thought they were pretty overboard on the Hillary side of the equation. I mean, they were really just reporting the negatives on Trump, and admittedly there were a lot of them.
Right.
But it was the articles on Hillary were kind of bandwagon-esque. They were, we're rolling along here, and everybody agrees with us, and look at what a fool Trump's making out of himself. So I mean, that's not my idea of the fourth estate. I think if something's wrong, you need to acknowledge it, and I'm sure that they would say that that's what they were doing. But it just when you added it all up, it just seemed pretty one-sided.
Yeah. Well, and also when you look at newspaper endorsements, I can't think of one that he got.
Yeah. Right.
So he has this distrust of the press.
Yeah.
And then he was on an interview, I don't know if you saw it, with Leslie Stahl at 60 Minutes. And
yes, I did,
and
he was looking somewhat presidential all of a sudden, wasn't he?
Yeah, he said, with the people who are being harassed, just stop it. And he says he doesn't think he's going to tweet that much. Yeah. But then, he gets, Vice President-elect Pence goes to see Hamilton, and he listens, and they give him a speech, and he tweets that, and he's tweeting about Saturday Night Live. So I don't know that he can control that.
Well, but maybe we have to consider that he's actually being strategic when he does that, and that it's working for him, right?
Yeah.
He's going around the news media. He's going direct to people with those tweets.
Right. Right.
But just in terms of the demeanor and the professionalism of the press, if we can call it that, the fourth estate, I just don't know if they're living up to the claims that they're making lately. One of the issues that came up is he ditched the news media, I guess, and went to dinner with his family.
Yeah.
Somebody was there, and they still managed to report it. And what they reported on was he bought a $34 hamburger.
Yeah.
Well, okay, be the fourth estate, but tell us about the important things. I mean, this isn't a fourth estate story that he spent, what he spent on a hamburger.
And part of that.
Fourth estate is reviewing, critiquing government, right?
Right.
How's that a government issue? But yes,
Right.
go ahead.
I think that in terms of the media, and you know this as an expert in public relations, that the media loves drama. I mean, when you think about all the free media this guy got in that campaign.
But there's a difference between media and fourth estate, right? Yeah. I mean, the press is saying we need access. They're not necessarily saying media access, right? Yeah. And there's expectations for professionalism and responsible agenda setting and things like that. And I just don't know that they've been demonstrating that. I don't know that they've got an argument right now, because I think they've been, they kind of got into the gutter with Trump in a lot of ways.
Well, sure they did. Sure,
Yeah.
Because again, even with the newspapers in the fourth estate, you still have to sell copies.
Right.
So there's and we know in just about everything, the more dramatic things are, the more conflict there is,
right,
the more revenue's going to come in.
Right.
I mean, when you go back, I think it was an executive, I think it was CBS News, who said, well, we cover him so much because he gives us so many ratings.
Right.
And I mean, he's an entertainer.
Right.
It's almost like he's running this like The Apprentice, in terms of this cabinet stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think he, at least me, he fooled me. I never thought this was going to happen. I never thought this was going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about my own politics, but my daughter called me at 7:30. I said, "Do you have nothing to worry about?" Pennsylvania's going to be, and I never thought that Michigan would go. I never thought that Wisconsin would go. But when you look at this, then you say, well, wait a minute. Bernie Sanders won Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders won Michigan. So there, and I had heard that Bill Clinton was saying, you got to go out into these rural communities, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
I think just like so many of us assumed he would never get the nomination.
Yeah.
And
we can come back to this in a minute, but I think one of the wrap-ups on this, as it was, for this part of the show, is that the research was flawed.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
things had changed,
Yep.
right? And maybe Hillary didn't run the best campaign.
Nope.
I think we were assuming that she was going to be on point a little bit more. But when we come back, we'll talk about some other issues
Sure.
relating to this. So
Okay.
we're going to take a quick break. The Calumet Roundtable will be right back. Welcome back to the Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Tom Roach. My guest today is Dr. Dan Dunn, and we're continuing our discussion about the recent election when Donald Trump became our president-elect. Dan, what about civility, damn it?
Yeah.
What are we going to do here? We had
Yeah.
candidates saying things that were just unacceptable
Yeah.
a year ago, newspaper editorials saying really critical, damning things about the candidates. Where are we at with this?
Well, he has, in my judgment, gone against everything that I thought was conventional. I thought that when he gave people these names like Crooked Hillary, Lying Ted, Marco, I can't remember, whatever it is with Marco's hands, I thought that when he accused Ted Cruz's father of maybe participating in the Kennedy assassination,
right.
I thought, but again, he has tapped into an anger out there, and I think when he said, I could be in New York or Manhattan, and I could shoot somebody, and they still would love me. I thought, my God, maybe he's right.
Well,
maybe
so-
there's a core out there.
So it could tell us that his supporters are that
Yeah.
supportive of him, but it might also be telling us that maybe these conventions that we had
Right.
about what's normal language
Right.
and normal and acceptable conversation, that maybe we were wrong.
Yep.
Right. And if you think about it, we started out in the 50s with the beginning of television, and everything was super formal. They were showing literary plays and
Right.
having serious conversations, and the newscasters were passing themselves off as experts on everything in the world, right? And we moved into the 70s eventually, and we ended up with Saturday Night Live, and it's Howard Stern on the radio,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is this really just us starting to become more real, do you think?
I don't know. I think that, I do think that as the media has expanded, and especially with cable media,
Yeah.
so everything is 24/7. And what I do, because I like to see the middle, the left, and the right, so I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC, and I watch Fox News, and you can see
Yeah.
some of the biases that come out. But it is the same problem, is they're focusing on all of this drama. And, I thought that Saturday Night Live was incredibly funny, in terms of their betrayal, especially of Trump. I don't know if you saw it last.
I saw that. How could you not? It was- yeah.
So you can, so I think some of the gloves are off, and I think that he's trying to figure out a way to circumvent all of this. But I think
Right.
I think some of it's going to be hard, especially if he finds himself in some legal, financial entanglements.
Right, but I'm thinking about the rest of us, though. I
Yeah.
mean, is this now acceptable? Is this the new normal? Are all elections going to be this gritty from this point on? Are we going to have one candidate say that the other candidate isn't fit for office? I mean, that was a really, and I don't know that it was. We may find out she was right
Yeah,
when she said that, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, but even if you think that's the case,
Right.
I can't imagine anybody having said that before. The lowest blow I ever remember seeing was when they had the vice presidential debate, and Dan Quayle was trying to compare himself
JFK.
to JFK, and
Lloyd Benson.
Lloyd Benson
Yeah.
said, "I knew JFK. You're no JFK, right?"
And that became the headlines.
But I know, but that was a kick, in the stomach,
Yeah. But he did that because.
and it was effective.
Yeah, it was incredibly effective.
But it was outside of the realm
Right.
of what people
Right.
thought was acceptable
Right.
at that point. You
But
have to
he
admit.
did that because Quayle kept comparing himself.
I understood.
to-
And Quayle was asking for it. Quayle was asking for it. Yeah.
And he said, well,
Yeah.
so he was that was a plant.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
waiting for it, so.
But wasn't that a violation
that-
of the civil code, if we
yeah,
could say, right?
Because what it did to Quayle
Yeah.
is it really and essentially destroyed his career because after that, what happened was the Republicans sent him to safe Republican states. They allowed him to give speeches to high school kids, and they allowed him to question and answer junior high kids.
Right. But he didn't go to Massachusetts.
Yeah, and when when he couldn't spell potato,
Yeah.
it reinforced that image. So
Right, right.
that could have been one of those moments
Yeah.
that just really destroyed his career.
And it was so it was effective, but
very
it was a
effective.
violation of the norm. And you know, if we think about this for a second,
Yeah.
what about when Reagan turns to the audience in his debate with Carter and says, "There he goes again"?
Yeah.
That was a demeaning thing to say about the President of the United States,
But
right?
he was waiting for it, you know, and then in that debate, but in the debate, yes, it was, you know, but part of it was that in that debate, Tom, the polls the week before were 42 to 42.
Yeah.
And when Reagan is up there and he looks normal, for
Yeah.
lack of a better word,
Right.
and in the end, and his close was actually written by David Gergen.
Yeah.
He said, you know, if you are better off now,
Right.
you know, and you had 18% inflation, you had gas lines,
Yeah.
and you had the hostage crisis, you know who to vote for. But I'm going to offer you another direction, and that's when the polls swung.
Right.
So
But
these
see,
moments,
but that message was that was an okay message to give. That was a well-crafted,
Yeah.
respectful
right?
message to give. But when he said, "There he goes again,"
Yeah.
that was being demeaning, right? And if we go back prior to that, you know, the things that people were saying about Nixon, somebody said something about, you know, he tries to pass himself off as professional, but we all get the sense that, you know, if nobody were looking, he'd be going after his opponents with a meat axe.
You're right.
You know?
Right. Well, he did that in 1946.
Yes.
At the beginning of his career.
Yes, he did, yes. So we have had moments
Right.
throughout American history where things got a little bit outside of the realm of acceptable comportment, right? But this whole campaign,
Right.
beginning to end, was out there. So I'm just wondering, do you think we're done with that now? Do you think it's just going to be gloves off, ridicule your opponent, or do you think that there's a possibility that we'll go back to being respectful
I think
have a more intellectual discussion?
so much depends upon what Trump does, because you are right. I don't remember a time, you know, and I think Obama said this on the campaign trail that he never doubted that Romney, even though he ran against him, was incompetent. He never doubted that.
Yeah.
That he never thought that. Never doubted. Never thought
Yeah.
that Romney was incompetent.
Right.
He never thought that McCain was incompetent. But you're right. It was an incredibly low blow.
Yeah.
But there was some believability.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in terms of that.
Well, in all those examples that I talked about,
Yeah.
I mean, there was a level of justification. It
Yeah.
wasn't just a made-up
But
charge.
I think
but still, it was a lowering of the standards.
I think, you know, if Trump, like in his, because the markets, I remember Tuesday night, the Dow futures were going crazy until he met with Obama. And when he met with Obama, they both seemed kind of civil. The markets stabilized, you know. And then his interview with Leslie Stahl, he came off as very professional.
Yeah.
If he tries
I was
to
amazed.
do, if he tries to do some things that will actually help this group of workers that were so loyal to him, and that means jobs.
I mean, look how smart he seems all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he comes out right after the election. His first message is he's going to get jobs for people, you know? Bill Clinton, right after getting elected, I think his first big announcement was gays in the military.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Maybe that needed to be done. I'm sure it did, but
that's not your
Do you
first
really
point.
want to make that your
that's not your first
your
point.
starting point for your presidency? So
Especially-
Trump really
excuse
looks
me.
a lot
Yeah.
smarter than the Clintons with all their experience in some ways now that he's in office.
because
which is
the
interesting.
Clintons campaigned in '92. It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what undercut Bush
Yeah.
41.
Yeah.
So if he does things like that, you know, if he looks at the Affordable Care Act and says, okay, what can I keep? You know, I think people want to make sure that they're protected regarding pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
And then people also want to see that their children are able to remain on their health care.
Yeah.
So if he tweaks it, if he works on jobs, you know, and if he picks a Secretary of State that will be perceived as credible, that will go along, because I am shocked. I don't know if you looked at the market today, it
Yeah.
went
Oh,
beyond
yeah.
19,000 points.
Yeah.
So in the
I
markets.
feel like I've crossed into another universe.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that a lot will depend
Yeah.
on what he does.
It looks like, though, I mean, it really looks like he's kind of knows what he's doing right now, and he's
does.
moving in the right direction. So then my other question is, what's the Democratic Party going to do? I mean, because they blew this.
They certainly did.
Yeah.
Again, let me just own up, I thought that the Republicans were going to be a mess after this.
Yeah.
I thought that
Right.
after he's gone,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
they were going to
Yeah.
have to almost redefine themselves, because when I looked at
I
this
think
election.
they're counting on 8 years at this point.
Yeah, when I looked at this election,
Yeah.
in the beginning, I never thought it would be Trump. I thought it would be a very social conservative, because Romney wasn't that. I mean, Obamacare is based off of his stuff. And
Yeah.
McCain was certainly not that.
Yeah.
And I thought they had to get this out of their system. Now, the Democrats run the risk of, when you lose an election in the center,
Yeah.
the Democrats, in my judgment, tend to go left. When the Democrats lost in 68 with Humphrey,
Yeah.
they went to McGovern in 72. When the Republicans lost with Nixon in 60, they went to Goldwater in 64. I think that the Democrats run the risk of going way far to the left. I
Yeah.
mean, and that
Yeah.
to get this
So-
out of their system.
Yeah, and I think that's a good prediction based on history. So the chances are that this rift that we're seeing actually will continue to grow for another 4 to 8 years until there's some coming together in the middle. That is all the time we have for our program. Thank you to Dr. Dan Dunn for joining us today on the Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Tom Roach. Have a great day.